Pause for a moment and listen closely. What I'm about to tell you might sound absurd, perhaps even offensive to logic, but it is the absolute truth. Everything you've learned about success is wrong. It's not intelligence, it's not luck, it's not talent. For years, I believed I needed a diploma, connections, or a perfect opportunity, until I realized something that only 1% of people in the world dare to apply. And, interestingly, that 1% controls nearly all the money on the planet. Now tell me, what if everything you were taught about money is a lie? What if you could change everything in a matter of months? You see, I can't change your life, but you can. And what I'm going to reveal here is something few understand. A person's life doesn't change because of money or work or education. It changes because of an idea. Yes, a simple idea. It seems too small, doesn't it? But ideas change destinies. Think about it. How many times have you had an idea that could have changed everything, but you gave up because you thought you weren't capable? How many times did someone say, "That won't make money," and you believed them? The truth is, you're not stuck due to a lack of opportunities. You're stuck because you haven't yet decided to act on a powerful idea. I've been exactly where you might be now. Broke, without experience, ashamed of the job I had, changing tires, scrubbing floors, doing any odd job that came along just to put food on the table. I remember the feeling of looking in the mirror and not recognizing myself, of thinking my life should be different, but not knowing where to start. And then someone gave me a book, Think and Grow Rich. And it wasn't the paper that changed my life. It was the idea that came with those pages. It was in that instant that I realized all I needed wasn't more technical instruction or a degree. It was an idea that I would accept, nurture, and defend until it became more real than my current reality. Don't underestimate this for a second. Ideas are seeds. If you bury an idea because you think there's no way or it's not for me, it dies. If you nurture that idea, even gradually, with a simple job, with small, consistent steps, it turns into something you no longer recognize as a product of fear. It turns into confidence. It turns into results. I started by charging $30 per month to clean one floor. Laugh if you want. I sometimes laugh too, but that meager contract was the first concrete step that transformed a vague intention into action. From there, I didn't stop acting. I turned one floor into several, and in a short time, I was earning $100,000 per year. After a longer period, over $1 million. It wasn't luck, it wasn't genius, it was persistence in an idea and the courage to act when others thought it was insignificant. Think about it. How many times have you had a brilliant idea and buried it under your own excuses? I don't have time. I don't have money. I don't have experience. Ask yourself, did these excuses change your life for the better, or just give you momentary comfort? Most people prefer the security of justification to the uncertainty of trying. So I challenge you to do something different. Grab a piece of paper right now and write down the idea you've been avoiding. Don't revise, don't criticize, just write. Then break that idea down into a step so small that you don't need courage to do it. Something you can complete in 24 hours. My rule was simple. If I could do it today, I did it. Now, how do you turn that idea into something practical today? First, document it. Write down in detail what transformation your idea promises in terms of who you will become, not just what you will have. Don't write, "I want to make money." Write, "I want to have the freedom to choose my time and receive a specific sum each month to support my family and invest in my growth." When you describe the version of yourself that already has what you desire, your brain starts looking for aligned behaviors. The second stage is to experiment quickly and cheaply. A pilot service, a simple page, an offer to friends. Don't wait for the perfect product. The first move is to test if there's demand and for you to learn. I remember how every early mistake taught me something crucial. Not a final blow, but an adjustment that kept me alive on the path. Third, repeat until it's incorporated. There's something powerful about intentional repetition. I hear many people say they get inspired by a video or reading, and 1 week later everything is back to normal. Real transformation requires repetition. Hearing a truth once is like writing in the sand. Hearing it 1,000 times is like engraving it in marble. Repeating affirmations, reviewing your idea, taking small actions every day. This changes the mental structures that govern your choices. When I started repeating my thoughts aligned with the idea, letting go of meaningless work became inevitable. My actions began to follow my new identity. Fourth, deal with fear as if it were a muscle. Exercise it. In the beginning, every action hurts. The first contact with the real possibility of change is frightening. I felt shame. I felt fear of being ridiculed. I felt the weight of what others would think. But each small step eroded that fear. The first time I got a better contract than those $30, I cried, not from shame, but from relief. The emotion that overcomes you when you take the first step is powerful and transformative. It leaves marks that no retroactive failure can erase. And when you take the second step, the pain will be less. By the third, almost imperceptible. Fifth, do a social experiment. Tell your idea to a trusted person, not to ask for permission, but to create accountability. Often, what seems like just a daydream turns into a commitment when spoken aloud. I started by telling my intentions to a friend, and that changed the way I saw myself. It wasn't just a dream, it was a plan. And if you think you have no one to talk to, write a letter describing your idea as if it has already happened. Read it every day. This is an agreement with yourself. Sixth, visualize in detail and act consistently. Visualization without action becomes illusion. Action without vision becomes wasted effort. See yourself serving clients, receiving payments, feeling the pride of contributing to something greater than yourself. At the same time, take small steps that prove this vision. Offer a minimum viable version of your service. Ask for feedback. Learn, adjust, repeat. Finally, I'll tell you something intimate and direct. What pulled me out of anonymity wasn't a big opportunity knocking at my door. It was the refusal to let the idea die out of fear of ridicule. The emotion I want you to feel now isn't false motivation. It's the vivid memory of that moment you realized you could be different. The same feeling that made me cry with relief and then laugh at myself for having underestimated the beginning. If you want to start, here it is. Write down your idea, break it into one step you can take today, repeat an affirmation that aligns your thinking with this idea, and execute. Do this for 7 consecutive days and observe how small decisions begin to open doors that once seemed closed. This is the idea that changes everything. Simple, vulnerable, transformative, and it only requires you to choose to nurture it instead of burying it. I grew up believing that to make money, one had to be very intelligent. That was the idea I was taught from a young age, and I believed it for years. I believed it so much that it shaped the way I saw the world. I saw others prospering and thought, they're smarter than I am. I looked at my reflection and saw an ordinary man, someone who hadn't been born with the gift of success. And by believing this, I kept myself trapped. Because when you believe you're not intelligent enough, you don't try. When you believe success is for a select few, you convince yourself you're not part of that group. And when you believe you have to suffer to earn money, suffering becomes a habit, not an exception. For a long time, I thought the problem was the world, the job, the economy. But the real obstacle wasn't external, it was internal. I remember the day I realized this clearly. I was exhausted, overworked, and earning the same amount. I woke up early, went to bed late, and nothing changed. Then, for the first time, I asked myself, What if the problem isn't the work? What if the problem is the way I think? That question changed everything. When I started studying the mind, I realized that money isn't the starting point. It's the reflection of what you believe about it. If you believe it's difficult, you repel it. If you believe you're not worthy, you sabotage it. If you believe you have to kill yourself working, the universe gives you more work and not more prosperity. Everything around you is a faithful copy of what you believe is possible, and the most frightening thing is that no one teaches us this. No one tells you that you are programming your own scarcity every day, with the words you use, with the thoughts you repeat, with the way you react. There was a time when I thought physical effort was the answer. The more I worked, the more I would have. But the result was always the same. I was tired, stressed, and nothing really changed. I was trapped in the belief that brute force was the solution, until I realized that the secret wasn't in force, but in consciousness. What changes your reality isn't how much you do, but how much you believe. And when your mind changes, the world obeys. I started observing successful people, and I noticed something curious. They didn't necessarily work more, but they thought differently. They acted as if they were already prosperous before the money arrived. They spoke like people who had abundance. And this behavior attracted circumstances compatible with that belief. It wasn't magic. It was focus. It was alignment. It was the power of the mind in action. Today, neuroscience explains what I experienced firsthand. The brain doesn't distinguish between reality and imagination when emotion runs high. This means that when you repeatedly think about something with strong emotion, your brain accepts it as truth and begins to act to confirm it. That's why people who consider themselves unlucky keep encountering bad luck, and those who feel blessed seem to live under a wave of good fortune. The world doesn't change, your perception does. And your perception creates the world you see. For years, I behaved like a victim of circumstance, and that cost me time, energy, and opportunities. I used to think, I can't invest, I can't take risks, I can't change. But one day I realized I didn't need permission, I needed a decision. That was the day I looked in the mirror and told myself, you are the creator of your own reality. At first, it sounded ridiculous. I even doubted myself, but I kept repeating it. And over time, that phrase started to change my attitude, my decisions, my tone of voice. I started to move as someone who creates, not someone who reacts. And here's the crucial difference. 99% of people live reactively, to fear, to bills, to the news, to the opinions of others. Only 1% live creatively. When you react, the world controls you. When you create, you set the pace. Reacting is repeating the past. Creating is shaping the future. And what determines which group you belong to isn't talent, it's belief. I remember the moment I realized how much this belief shaped everything. I was at a conference, sitting in the back of a packed auditorium. Up front, a man spoke with such confidence that the audience seemed mesmerized. And I thought, if I could speak like that, everything would change. But in the very next second, a voice inside me whispered, "You'll never make it. You're not like him." That voice had accompanied me since childhood, the voice of limitation, of fear, of comparison. And it was that day I decided to silence it. I didn't need to be him. I needed to be me, the best version of myself. When you convince yourself you're not capable, the whole world conspires to prove you right. But when you decide to believe in something new, the world finds ways to confirm that new belief as well. It's as if reality waits for your decision to start organizing itself. I saw this happen when I started my business. At the beginning, there was no logical reason for it to succeed, none at all. I had no experience, no contacts, no investment. But I acted as if it were possible, and suddenly doors began to open. Clients emerged from unexpected places. Opportunities appeared. Not because the universe decided to be generous, but because I was finally attuned to the right frequency. And perhaps that's what's missing in your life right now. Aligning your mind with the outcome you desire. Stop repeating that it won't work. Stop saying it's difficult. These words are commands. Your subconscious obeys each one of them as an order. Change the command. Replace "I can't" with "I'm learning how to." Replace "it's difficult" with "it's becoming easier." The mind learns through habit, and habit is born from repetition. Here's a test. For 7 days, observe every phrase you utter about money. Write them down. At the end of the week, read everything. You'll realize that most of what you say is a reflection of inherited beliefs, from your parents, from school, from society. They aren't truths, they are programs. And the good news is that everything learned can be reprogrammed. When I understood this, I stopped fighting reality and began to shape it. Because the secret isn't in being lucky, it's in being aware. Success doesn't begin when money arrives. It begins when the mind shifts. When you stop thinking like a victim and start thinking like a creator. When you stop waiting for the right moment and decide to be the right moment. And I ask you, 1 year from now, when you look back, will you still be believing in the same ideas that hold you captive today? Will you continue to feed fear, doubt, and scarcity? Or will you have the courage to dismantle those lies and construct a new truth about who you are and what you're capable of? Because in the end, the only thing separating you from the life you desire is the belief you still choose to uphold. Do you know one of the greatest prisons that has ever existed? It's living to please others. It's an invisible prison, comfortable on the outside, but suffocating on the inside. For many years, I lived in it without realizing it. I did what others expected of me, said what I thought they wanted to hear, made decisions based on the fear of displeasing them. And all of it left me exhausted, empty, as if I were alive, but not truly living. The cruelest part of this prison is that it's silent. No one binds you with chains. You construct the bars yourself. Every time you say yes when you wanted to say no, every time you shrink yourself to fit into someone else's mold, every time you deny your own voice to be accepted. I remember a specific day, sitting in the back of an immense auditorium. Up front was a man named Bill Gove, and the entire room seemed spellbound by him. He didn't just speak with words, he spoke with his soul. I watched and thought, if I had that kind of confidence, everything would change. But what I felt was fear. Fear of being seen, fear of speaking, fear of looking foolish. And then he said something that struck me like lightning. If you want to be free, you need to be yourself. Not what your family thinks you should be, not what the world expects you to be, but who you truly are. That phrase echoed within me for weeks. It was as if someone had turned on a light in a dark room I had avoided entering. I realized that the life I was living wasn't mine. It was a reflection of what others expected, and that broke me inside, because I realized I was squandering the greatest gift a human being has, authenticity. How many of us live like this, trapped in roles we didn't choose, trying to meet expectations that never truly belonged to us? How many dreams are buried every single day because someone is afraid of appearing ridiculous? When I started searching for who I truly was, everything became uncomfortable, because being authentic requires courage. You start to realize that not everyone will like the real you. Some will call you arrogant, others will ridicule you, others will simply drift away. And for a while, I tried to avoid that discomfort, until I understood that pleasing everyone is the fastest way to lose yourself completely. Life wasn't meant to be lived to please others. It was meant to be lived with purpose. Being who you truly are is the first step toward freedom. And I'm not talking about financial freedom, but the freedom to think, to feel, to act according to your own essence. When you stop living for others, something magical happens. Your energy shifts. You start to attract people and opportunities that resonate with your true self, and what once seemed impossible begins to feel natural. I remember when I decided I wanted to speak in public. It was one of the most terrifying moments of my life. The mere thought of standing before an audience made my hands sweat, my voice falter, my body tremble. I spent hours rehearsing alone in front of the mirror, trying to find my voice. And every time I made a mistake, a part of me said, "Give up, this isn't for you." But another part, the part that had begun to awaken, said, "Keep going, this is how you'll free yourself." I discovered that courage isn't the absence of fear, it's a decision. It's choosing to press on even while trembling, and that's exactly what I did. At first, it seemed like a disaster. I stammered, forgot what I wanted to say, felt ashamed. But over time, something began to shift. With every attempt, every small victory, I felt more like myself. And one day, I realized I wasn't just speaking anymore. I was connecting. People began to listen to me, to feel, to change. And all of this happened because I stopped trying to be what I thought they wanted to see and started being who I truly was. Life taught me that living to please others is like running on a treadmill. You exert yourself, sweat, exhaust yourself, but you remain in the same spot. You never get anywhere. But when you decide to be authentic, the path opens up. It might be more challenging at first because you'll encounter resistance, you'll lose some people, you'll disappoint expectations, but gradually you realize you haven't truly lost anything, only what never truly belonged to you. Today, when I look back, I see that the fear of being myself almost stole the life I live today. And if I could show you what lies on the other side of fear, you would understand why it's worth it. There's lightness, there's clarity, there's power, and the most beautiful part is that when you allow yourself to be authentic, you free others to do the same. Think about how many times you've silenced yourself to avoid conflict. How many times you've laughed at something you didn't find funny just to be accepted. How many times you've swallowed your opinions so as not to feel outside the group. Now imagine how many opportunities, connections, and experiences failed to materialize because you didn't allow yourself to be real. Authenticity might be frightening at first, but it's what makes you magnetic. The world doesn't need copies. It needs whole people. I want to propose something practical to you. Choose one area of your life where you feel you're not being true to yourself. It could be in your work, your relationships, or your dreams. Now imagine what it would be like if you acted with complete honesty in that aspect, without fear, without a mask, just being who you are. What decision would you make? What would you stop doing? What words would you say? Write that down. That is your compass. Being yourself is the foundation of all transformation, because no external wealth can compensate for the poverty of living a life that isn't yours. And I learned the hard way by trying to fit into spaces too small for the size of my spirit. The day I decided to be true to myself, everything changed. My results changed, my relationships changed, my energy changed. Because when you align with what is true, life responds. The freedom you seek isn't in earning more money, it's in allowing yourself to live without the burden of pleasing others. True success isn't about being accepted by everyone, it's about accepting yourself. And when that happens, the rest falls into place naturally. There's a prison even crueler than living to please others, the prison of fear and doubt. It's silent, invisible, and silently destroys dreams. Doubt paralyzes you. It convinces you that it's safer not to try. And when you believe that, your life hits pause, even as everything around you continues to move. I lived in that prison for years, and I can tell you with absolute certainty, it has no iron bars, but it has walls of thoughts. What if I fail? What if they laugh at me? What if I'm not good enough? These questions followed me like shadows. I remember a period in my life when I couldn't raise my hand in a meeting to ask a simple question. I stayed silent even when something inside me wanted to express itself. I was afraid of looking foolish, afraid of making a mistake in front of others, afraid of being judged. And what fear did was exactly what it always does. It kept me small. Fear doesn't just stop you from speaking. It stops you from living. It steals opportunities, erodes confidence, and turns ordinary days into repetitions of the same story. The story of someone who could have, but never tried. I recall a phrase I heard from my mentor, Earl Nightingale, which completely changed my perspective. We underestimate what we are capable of doing and believe that others are capable of things that we are not. That stuck with me. I realized that my entire life I had put others on a pedestal and myself down. I saw successful people and thought they had something I didn't: luck, talent, connections. And then I understood. The only difference between those who achieve and those who don't is action. It's not courage, it's not intelligence, it's simply taking action even when afraid. It was this decision that transformed everything. When I started my first business, I was completely unprepared. I knew nothing about cleaning, had no money and no structure, but there was one thing I did have: the willingness to act. I was terrified, but I said yes anyway. And you know what happened? I made mistakes many times. I made promises I couldn't keep. I made ridiculous errors. But with each attempt, something inside me changed. The fear diminished. Confidence grew. This is what people don't understand. Confidence doesn't precede action. It's born from it. Fear isn't an enemy you destroy. It's a visitor you learn to ignore. It will never completely disappear. The difference is that over time it loses its power to control you. Each time you do something despite the fear, it shrinks. And the more you confront it, the smaller it becomes, to the point where you almost forget it exists. The problem is that most people do the opposite. They feed the fear. They think about it all day long, repeat the same excuses, convince themselves they aren't ready. And the more they feed the fear, the stronger it gets. I've seen people with extraordinary talents waste an entire lifetime waiting for the right moment. And that moment never came. They waited for courage, but courage doesn't arrive. It's built. It's a process, and it begins the moment you do what you fear. One step, one conversation, one request, one attempt. Fear will always be big before the action and small after it. What science has already proven is that doubt has a physical structure. Researchers at Yale University discovered that when a person thinks, "What if I fail?" the brain activates the same areas linked to physical pain. In other words, the fear of making a mistake literally hurts. But there's something even more powerful. The brain also learns through repetition of experiences. Each time you act despite fear, you reprogram your neural connections to associate risk with growth, not with pain. This is neuroplasticity in action. You train yourself to be confident. I want you to think about how many opportunities you've let slip away because of fear. How many times you said no when your heart said yes. How many times you postponed a dream waiting to be ready. Now imagine looking back 10 years from now and realizing that the same doubts that paralyze you today are still there, only now accompanied by regret. This doesn't have to happen. Change can start today, and it begins with something simple. Choose one thing you've been putting off because you're afraid, and do it. Just one. When I finally understood this, I created a personal challenge. For 7 days, I would do one uncomfortable thing each day. On the first day, I made a call I'd been avoiding for weeks. On the second, I spoke in public, even with my hands trembling. On the third, I asked for help, something that felt impossible. And by the end of the week, something incredible happened. I started to find pleasure in discomfort. The feeling of fear still existed, but alongside it came a new excitement, a sense of progress. I felt alive. This is what fear does when you confront it. It transforms into energy. The same force that once paralyzed you now propels you forward. It's the same force that drives artists, athletes, entrepreneurs. Everyone feels fear. The difference is that the great ones don't let fear decide. They use it as a compass. When something scares you, it's a sign that it's worth it. So I propose a challenge to you. For the next 7 days, do something that fear has been preventing you from doing. Something small but significant. It could be calling someone, starting a project, recording a video, sending a proposal, asking for an opportunity. And every time fear comes, remember, it's just a sign that you're growing. I discovered that doubt is the most skilled thief in the world. It doesn't rob you all at once. It does it little by little, one dream at a time, one attempt at a time, one idea at a time. And when you realize it, it has already taken everything. But it only wins when you let it. The moment you act, even while trembling, is the moment you disarm it. And when you act repeatedly, it never again has power over you. Doubt almost destroyed me. It made me feel small, made me silent, made me invisible. But action saved me. And today I understand. True freedom begins when you decide that fear won't control you anymore. Because courage isn't living without fear. It's choosing to move forward, even when it screams. It's in that instant that life changes. And that's when you discover that the impossible was always just something you hadn't tried yet. Everything you've heard so far boils down to a single truth. Your life changes the exact moment you decide to change within. Success, freedom, and abundance don't begin when something happens externally, but when you choose to think differently, act differently, and believe you are capable. It's this decision that takes you out of the 99% who react and places you among the 1% who create. The idea, the thought, the belief, all of this builds the reality you live in now. And if you had the courage to look within and realize what needs to change, then you've already taken the first step to become part of that 1%. Keep moving forward, because the journey of the mind is infinite, and each step you climb reveals a new level of wisdom. The next video appearing now will help you climb one more step, one more stride in the direction of your evolution and the person you were born to be. Thank you for being here with me. I'll see you in the next video, where you will become 1% better than you are now.